You're watching Turn the Pages on CAN TV, and I'm your host, Jordan Rivers. I just want to say thank you for tuning in. I have a very special guest with us, Lanaye Lawson. Say hi. There's so much that I want to get into. This is a very special episode because we are in Black History Month. So this is my first show to have on Black History Month, and I'm really excited about everything that we're going to talk about. Unfortunately, we only have 25 minutes, so we're going to try our best to squeeze things in as much as we can. But so let's just get right down to business. So Lanaye, you're a teacher, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that first. So I'm really excited to talk about the second part. But what school do you teach at?
I'm at Stagg School of Excellence.
Okay, and what grade?
Fourth grade.
Fourth. And what subject?
Right now, reading, writing, and social science.
Okay, reading, writing, and social science.
Yes.
Got it. Reading is so important, and this show
Yes.
is based off literacy because of what Turn the Pages stands for. And definitely going into Black History Month, in our history, African Americans were not allowed to read or write in any way. And the only reason why, it began to happen is so that we can actually do the bookkeeping for our slave masters, and so and to learn about Christianity and to be able to take on that religion as Christians. So those were the main factors. We were not allowed to read in fear of, what's the word I'm looking for, and maybe uprise.
Right, us being empowered. Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. So what you all may not know who are watching right now is that Lanaye Lawson is the founder of the Black Chicago Museum here in Chicago. And so we are going to get into what that is, how you can be involved, how you can support, and what to look out for next. So can you tell me about the museum?
So the museum is a nonprofit that teaches children the history of Black people in Chicago, starting from the 18th century all the way on up to the present through art. And it's embedded within the school, my school, Stagg School of Excellence. It's like a timeline. So right now we have 2 exhibits on display. That exhibit starts with Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable, which starts in 1775 to 1800. And then the next exhibit is what happened after he left Chicago as it concerns Black people. So we titled that exhibit Chicago City of Refuge / Black Pioneers 1833 to 1860. And that teaches about Black people in Chicago from that time period. And, we'll keep telling this story to the present. So right now we're actually working on sketches for the next exhibit, which will be Chicago. It's called The Battlefield for Freedom, and that focuses on Chicago's role, Black Chicago's role in the Civil War, from 1861 to 1865.
Okay, that's a lot of information. I believe
Yes.
we have a caller. We can take that call now.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. What can we do? What question do you have for us this evening? Hello? We may be having a little trouble with the call. We'll come back. Hopefully you'll call back. So I really want to, let's see, where were we? Okay, so you talked about the exhibit.
Yes.
Now, first, I want to know what made you start the museum?
So I was reading in 2012. I've always had passion for African American people in the history, so I read a lot of books on it. And I was reading a book called The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson, and I, for the first time, learned in depth the story of the Great Migration. And that just fascinated me because I felt connected. I learned how so many African Americans came to Chicago. Like, it was a reason behind that. And I felt while reading that, other people, do they know this story? And so I just felt compelled to tell people. And as a teacher, my children, my students were the first who I wanted to tell. But it wasn't enough for me to just tell it to them. I felt like I'm missing out on telling it to other students as well. So I said, you know what, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to tell this through a museum. And I'm going to put it right where they are every day. And that's how it started.
Okay. Now, if you can, because you said you read The One of Other Sons?
Yes.
Okay, now I have that book on my shelf, but I haven't read it yet.
Oh, you
So
have to
I have
read
a
it.
list of books and a shelf that's my go-to after I finish one book. So I want to know if you can just give me a little bit of what detail just really made you want to share our story with the world or with your students throughout CPS.
The reasons, she goes into great depth about the reasons why we came to Chicago. Jim Crow was one of the main reasons. The struggles that so many African Americans faced in the South through Jim Crow that they were just tired of. World War I was another reason that pushed us here. There was more opportunity in the North. So that, I guess, before that, I just thought, oh, African Americans are just here. I never really put much thought into us being here in Chicago. And so when I learned that there is a reason why we're here in great masses, that just inspired me to want to share this story to others.
That, you know what, and that's great. Oh, we have a caller. Maybe that's him calling back. Okay. I'll take it. Hello?
Hello?
Hi. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay. How can, what question do you have for us this evening?
I have my statement. I have a statement.
Can you speak up just a little bit? I'm struggling, trying to hear you.
I have a comment.
Okay, what's your comment?
It's important to learn how to read because Sam is the only thing that will save us.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So important and still important to this day. Only if people understood, our foundation, our history, they would definitely know more. Did you have any more input?
Nope.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for calling in to Turn the Pages. I hope you tune in next week. Have a great one. Okay, so we touched bases on Jim Crow, and what was the other detail that you went over?
World War One.
And
That was
World
the
War
other
One.
reason why they came, and also because they really weren't needed as much in the South. There were a lot of machines that were created to push them away from that need that they once had in the South. So. Really just the idea of so many, the great mass of people, millions of African Americans just taking their freedom, and that's just inspiring, because that was a risk. They're going into a new land, a new place. They don't know about Chicago, they've never been there. Or Detroit, and the other places that they came to that was in the North. So that was just liberating for me. And I just felt like other people need to know this because I wasn't taught in school.
Absolutely. I was just about to say, there was a lot that we were not taught in school and a lot that we were. But, I think if we were taught a lot of our history, our true history, then we would have been impacted in such a way where we would be greater than what we are now, you know. So
I just want to build on that. When I learned that part of history, that's where I originally was going to start the museum at the Great Migration, telling the story of just the Great Migration. But I realized I can't tell that without telling what happened before the Great Migration. So that's why the museum starts with John Baptiste Point du Sable in the 18th century, so that people can understand each part of the history in Chicago and not just in the middle, because that's kind of in the middle. The Great Migration started in 1915, around that time.
Okay.
So I felt like I couldn't leave out what happened, because there were black people in Chicago before that time. It just wasn't a lot, and it was a lot different. It felt a lot different because it wasn't a lot during that time as far as race is concerned. But I don't know, I'm getting into it.
Well, look, it's Black History Month, and you know, what a history that we do have. Honestly,
Yes, it is.
I do want to. It's so much that I want to ask you, and I just feel like there's never, enough time. So I do want to first, before we get into something else, I want to know. How can people visit the Black Chicago Museum?
So the museum, again, is located at Stagg School of Excellence on 7424 South Morgan. People now can come during school hours from 8:45 to 3:45 and take a self-guided tour.
Okay. So, and if they want to support the Black Chicago Museum, they can go to www.blackchicagomuseum.org. So if you
Yes.
have any questions
Yes.
about it, please feel free to go there. Or if you want to watch the episode again because you missed a piece of information, feel free to go to www.turn-the-pages.org, and you can go to seasons 1 and go right to this episode. So let's go into, so we talked about the exhibits, and I want to know first, there's so much information, and
Yes.
I believe I went to the first exhibit.
Yes.
So I missed the second one, and I'm really upset about that now. I'm like, oh, I missed it. So is there a third one?
Yes, so right now we're working on the sketch phase. And then when I say we, I hire artists because remember the exhibit is told through art. So I hire artists to create the exhibit. So right now I do the research and I talk to several historians to make sure I'm on the right track. And then I communicate my research to the artists and they create a sketch based on my research. So right now for the third exhibit, they are finished with the sketch phase. And actually tomorrow they're coming to the school to start putting the sketch on the wall. And that exhibit is called The Battlefield for Freedom, 1861 to 1865. And that will focus on Chicago, Black Chicago's role in the Civil War.
Okay.
How at that time period you had the wartime migration, so many African Americans who were South were coming to Chicago via Union soldiers to help with the Union. So it wasn't so much of an underground railroad type of feel. They were getting more help coming north, and when they came here, they were able to work still. Some of them even started their own businesses. And once African Americans were able to fight in the war, Chicago had enlistment locations where soldiers could enlist and to be in the war, in the Civil War. And Illinois' regiment was called Illinois' Black Regiment was called the 29th Illinois Infantry. So it'll focus on that aspect and also just what was going on in Chicago with Black people outside of the war as well. But the focus of every museum is to show how Blacks were educated, working, self-employed. So despite all these obstacles that they face, they rose. They did not give up. They pushed through. And that's what I want to see highlighted, because when I talk to students, all they know is slavery. All they know is slavery. Even some of them who visit the museum for the first time, I would ask them to just talk about what they see. What do you see? Before I jump in and tell them what it is. I just, tell me what you see. And they will just immediately assume that this is slavery. She's a slave. He's a slave.
They're on a plantation.
Right.
This is what this
So
is.
the focus.
Well, we have a caller. I'll take it. Hi, how are you this evening?
Yes.
Yes, do you have a question or comment for me tonight?
Yes, I want to know. Yes, I want to know does she have the documentary Hidden Colors at her school?
I have it at home. I don't have it at school.
But that's a great
That's a
documentary
great
series.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yep. I think kids should definitely see that as well as Roots.
Absolutely. Was that all you have for me this evening?
Yes, that's all I have. I just advise her to
That's
get
a
it.
great idea.
Yeah, it's a wonderful idea. So thank you so much for tuning in and calling in. I really appreciate you. Have a great night. Yes, Hidden Colors. Oh my goodness, that I've learned things. I'm like, why didn't I know this?
Right.
Oh, that
And
is
again, it speaks to, just there's so much more that we just do not know to show how amazing our culture is that's been hidden from us.
It is.
Hidden colors.
Absolutely. And I feel like Hollywood is catching on. For one,
Yes,
we have a lot
yes.
more black producers,
Yes.
a lot more black writers.
Yep.
We have women and men out here who represent us and who want to show the best
Our
of what we
story.
have.
That's
So
right.
this past week, I was able to go see Hidden Figures
Oh, that's an
and
amazing
Fences.
movie. Okay.
And oh
Yes.
my gosh, was
Yes.
it amazing. And when we talk about Hidden Figures, just what we didn't know, what was hidden, that
Right.
these three black women,
Yep.
and that's just the main character.
Right.
Those are not the other computers
Right.
who worked.
Right.
Was it in the West Wing, in the
Right.
basement, where
Right.
no windows, no nothing?
Yep, but they still persevered.
Yes, mathematicians,
Yep.
just there to help NASA.
That's right.
Just
That's right.
it's wonderful being able to see us in positive light.
Right, right,
Because
right.
every time I feel like today when we're shown we're victims,
Yeah.
we're being killed for, just ridiculous reasons. So to
Right,
be able
it's
to
always
see who we
negative.
are in a positive light and to
Right.
say, I had something to do with this. The
Right.
person who has my skin color, who looks like me,
Right.
had something to do with this
this.
great,
Right.
Right. Thing that happened,
Right.
that took place, this great piece of history.
Right.
And so just knowing our history, sitting in that theater made me proud to be who I am.
That's right.
I'm like, look at these black women who are mathematicians.
Right.
And we have so many kids today that struggle academically in reading and math, but these women,
Right. Right.
oh my God,
right.
what a great example. And it
Yes,
makes me think
yes.
to, if I was a certain age, how much would that have inspired me? And so I want to ask
yeah.
this question to you. How has the museum impacted students who you deal with firsthand? And, have you inspired them? And,
Yes.
what differences do you see in them now
Yes.
that they didn't have prior to the knowledge of who they have come from?
Right. Great question. So I've been blessed to have the same group of students this year that I had last year. And last year, they were new. And it was a challenge. It was a challenge. And not all of them, but a handful of them. And I received a grant that required me to track them and their behavior, because the goal of the museum is to not only educate students on their history, but to be able to inspire them. And so through that inspiration, I feel that the museum will help to change their behavior. And so I had to track students' behavior every day. Students who had, been on tours and interacted with the museum daily. And through my data, I found that before going to the museum, we have a behavior system. They were not rising up as frequently until after they were going to the museum. And it was really amazing to see. And now I have them this year, and I have less behavior issues with them because I have instilled, I know the museum has instilled just greatness inside of them, where they now know that they are people first of all, who come from a great people,
Absolutely.
who had universities and were wealthy and had gold, and so when they know that this is what they come from, they want to rise to that. And so the museum continues to pour that in their system, because there's nowhere in the museum where you see African Americans looking inferior at all, or less than at all. You see them rising and persevering. And so that's what I noticed in the students, especially the students who were able to interact with the museum daily.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why my goal is to really push this museum to the next level so that I can reach more students and help change lives.
Absolutely. Like, this is just from seeing a movie about three women who I didn't know. It made me walk out the movie theater in different
You
ways.
felt like you could do anything.
I'm so smart.
Right.
I got
Right.
this,
Right.
And just to watch the interviews that have taken place even prior to people seeing the movie, and Taraji P. Henson, she said that she was never good in math. Never. They had to have a mathematician on set so that when she acted everything out, it looked like she knew what she was talking about. But it gave her a deeper respect for what she was doing. And so just to see these actors take on roles that of these three strong women, and it was more, the focus was really on what they did, how they had their struggle inside NASA. It didn't, we know what time it was in, so that's not even the half of what they went through. Is that they continue to push and exist and everything. And so I love it. So I'm really glad that those children who are blessed to be around you, they get to be inspired and want to be better, because that saying goes, when you know better, you do better. And it's true. So, oh my gosh, that alone just excites me, because this needs to be covered throughout our entire school system, not just in Chicago, but nationally. We need to know about everyone's history, because every one of us, every ethnicity deserves to see themselves as heroes, deserves to see who they were prior to coming to being an immigrant of the U.S. We're born here citizens, but we have so much rich history, even, prior to being slaves. We were queens and kings, and we ruled kingdoms, and we fought for it. So there's just so much that we can, get into. So I'm trying to stay on track, and I know we have a limited amount of time, which is never enough. And I'll say that every episode, is never enough time that we have. So I do want to ask you, I've been wanting to ask you this question for a couple years now. Do you see yourself writing a textbook for kids, for schools, based on African American history?
I do, because unfortunately the history that is taught in the museum that I know of, and I've looked extensively, there are no textbooks for children that teaches the history of John Jones, the history of Chicago's urbanization, the history of African Americans migrating to Chicago during the early 19th century. There's the history that is taught at the Black Chicago Museum. There is not a wealth of textbooks that teach children this history. So that is definitely something that I thought of and I plan to take on.
Okay, well, I will definitely, push you along the way, and I'll definitely be waiting for it, because why not? So we have to wrap up our show. I'm saying definitely. I'm so excited just to have you here to talk about the Black Chicago Museum. So if you have any questions or you want to rewatch this episode, please go to www.turn-the black-pages.org. And if you would like to support the Black Chicago Museum or even go and visit, please go to www.blackchicagomuseum.org. I am your host, Jordan Rivers, and this is our wonderful guest and founder of the Black Chicago Museum, Lanaye Lawson.
And thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming out. So I hope you tune in next Monday. Have a great week.